And we're back here once again, folks, on WrestleRant. I'm Graham Giuseppe Matthews. Here on WrestleRant, I break down all the pay-per-views that I watch on the WWE Network. And today we're talking about the big event from 1986, almost exactly 30 years ago today, or especially this month. I don't think it's on this day exactly, but 30 years ago, give or take a few days. The big event, 1986. So, in my opinion, overall, before I get into each match here, not nearly as notable or as historically significant as the Wrestling Classic from 1985, which had a lot of good matches. And this show had its fair share of decent matches too, but I felt like the tournament aspect of that show, despite the fact that it ran long, made it more significant, made it more historical and memorable. This show, not so much. It felt like a random ass house show just televised on pay-per-view. The big event, it felt like a big event. It was in front of WWE's largest audience to date, I believe, up to this point, before WrestleMania 3, only months later. So it did have that big, epic atmosphere, which was cool, but each match was kind of forgettable. No real marquee matches other than the main event and one of the other tag team matches. But I'll break it down right now. The Killer Bees versus Jimmy Jack Funk and Hoss Funk. Pretty forgettable tag team match. The Killer Bees scored the victory. The Magnificent Morocco versus Haku in a time limit draw. Went to 20 minutes, but they only showed part of the match here. And that's the thing with this pay-per-view. They cut out most of the entrances, and a lot of this is cut out. So the pay-per-view itself is only an hour and 50 minutes long, an hour 40 or something like that. So it's one of the shortest pay-per-views available on the WWE Network because a lot of it's cut out. I don't know if it's for copyright reasons or whatever. But it goes literally from bell to bell. So if you don't want to watch the entrances or any of the filler crap, this is the pay-per-view for you. It literally blows by. But this went to a time limit draw. Ted Arcidi versus Tony Garea. Quick squash match. Ted Arcidi scores the victory. Tony Garea retired a short time afterwards. Became a stooge for Vince McMahon a short time later. Junkyard Dog versus Adrian Adonis. Very forgettable match. Adrian Adonis was kind of deteriorating by this point. Was not the same, I mean, even by 1985 when he was in the Wrestling Classic, was still kind of on the down spiral, but he was even more so here in like an even worse shape than he was a year prior, so not really a good match at all. GYD wins via count. It was probably for the better that the match was kept short and sweet because GYD was not a great worker and Adrian Adonis by this point neither was he, so it was probably better that this match was kept short and sweet. Dick Slater versus Dick Slater versus Iron Mike Sharp. That's a tongue twister. Didn't Iron Mike Sharp recently pass away? I feel like he did. He's one of the most notable, I believe anyway, jobbers of all time. Not Iron Mike DiBiase. That's Teddy DiBiase's, the $1 Million Man's father. That's a different guy. Iron Mike Sharp, I believe, is one of the most notable, famous jobbers of all time, and he did not last long in WWE. He had a few appearances here and there. He did, of course, in famous fashion, job to Dick Slater. The match was really nothing of a note. Six-man tag team action, Bobby Heenan, King Kong Bundy, and Big John Studd beating the Machine, Super Machine, Big Machine, and Lou Albano. And six-man tag team action via disqualification after the Giant Machine got involved. Again, not really anything of a note. Pretty standard six-man tag team match with a lackluster conclusion. Ricky Steamboat in our first really, really good match of the night, in my opinion, versus Jake Roberts in a snake pit match. So that was pretty interesting. I thought the stipulation was a bit hokey, but it did fit, obviously, the feud and Jake Roberts' character. So not as, gimmicky or not as, convoluted or as much of a train wreck as you would probably expect. But I thought it was a really good match. Ricky Steamboat was still building momentum en route to his IC Championship match, that epic IC title match at WrestleMania 3 months later with Macho Man and Randy Savage. So a good win for him here and a really, really good match. Billy Jack Hayes versus Hercules Hernandez. All right for what it was. Didn't really get much time. Billy Jack Hayes, or Haynes rather, scored the victory. Just kind of there. Not really what it could have been, but still for the time it was given, it was decent. This was fantastic. The Fabulous Rougeaus versus the Dream Team of Greg Valentine and Brutus Beefcake. This was a really, really good match. And I've talked about the Rougeau brothers before, my Royal Rumble reviews, my Survivor Series reviews. They were a phenomenal team. Had some phenomenal entrance music too, but as a team, they were really, really, really underrated in the ring. And to me, it just blows my mind they're not, currently in the conversation for... They're not the greatest tag team of all time, but they should definitely be in that conversation. Very rarely do I hear their name get brought up. For one, on WWE TV, but also when it's getting debated, who's the greatest tag team of all time. Very rarely do I hear the name of the Fabulous Rougeau brothers get brought up, and I feel like they deserve to be because they're a very, very great tag team, and were also, in addition to being entertaining as characters, they were awesome in the ring. So, really good stuff here. Harley Race versus Pedro Morales. The match itself was alright, but it was significant in that it was a rematch from the 1986 King of the Ring finals that Harley Race won. He did win here again. So good win for him. The match really wasn't much of note. But Hulk Hogan defended the WWE Championship in the main event against Paul Orndorff. So a nice little, 180 from the year prior when Paul Orndorff made the save for Hulk Hogan in the WWE title match against Roddy Piper, where Bob Orton interfered. They were on the same side on that night. A year later, they're fighting for the WWE title after Paul Orndorff. Despite all the momentum that he built up as a babyface, he would soon become jealous of Hulk Hogan. A lot like the story they would soon tell with Macho Man and Hogan, and there really could not be another babyface as big as Hulk Hogan, so it would always pretty much have everyone turn heel who was as big of a star as Hogan, other than the Ultimate Warrior for the most part. But anyway, a good match for what it was. Again, one of Hogan's better outings. The match ended in a DQ, a lot like the Hogan-Piper match, which was not uncommon for most Hulk Hogan matches, by the way, obviously. Many Hulk Hogan title defenses ended via DQ because they wanted to protect Orndorff and obviously keep the championship on Hogan. Interference from, I believe, not Bob Orton. Let me double check here. I forgot who interfered in the main event. It was Bobby Heenan, who was obviously the manager and kind of turned Orndorff to the dark side in early 1996. But a good match for what it was and a nice way of going off the show. Still WWE Champion Hulk Hogan. So like I said, that's the big event in 1986. I know, kind of an abbreviated review, but each match really didn't have much substance to it, so it's kind of hard to analyze each match. But not really a good show. It is quick. It does absolutely fly by like that, like a finger snap. But you do have two really good matches here. The main event was solid, not must-see, but I thought Ricky Steamboat and Jake Roberts was a good match, and another great match, and easily the best bout of the entire night between the Fabulous Rougeaus and the Dream Team. So check out one, or if not both, of those matches when you find the time. Quick and painless. Some of the best 20 minutes you'll ever spend watching wrestling. But the rest of the show is kind of forgettable, despite being an hour and a half, 45-minute show. It is kind of a missable show, so I would not go out of your way to watch the whole show, but I would certainly recommend, check out those matches I just, recommended to you. Ricky Steamboat and Jake Roberts, as well as the Fabulous Rougeaus versus the Dream Team. So again, guys, that is the big event 1986. I believe that fills my quota for old school pay-per-views from the 80s. I think I have now reviewed every pay-per-view from the 80s for WWE, which is not saying much, I realize that, because in the 80s we only had WrestleMania, Survivor Series, the Rumble, and SummerSlam, in addition to these two big shows I just covered in the past week, the big event and the Wrestling Classic. So I've now covered every pay-per-view from the 80s. Now we move on to the 90s. So moving forward, what pay-per-views will I be reviewing? I know is the most popular question on all your minds right now. Probably not, but that's the big question. What will I be covering in the weeks and months and whatever to come? It's basically at this point, because I've pretty much covered every major WWE pay-per-view, like every SummerSlam, every WrestleMania, you know what I mean? I've covered pretty much everything for the most part, so now it's just kind of miscellaneous stuff. Other than Armageddon coming up in December and November, I'll be covering every Armageddon pay-per-view. Other than Armageddon, I've covered every major WWE pay-per-view that had more than a few installments. So in the weeks to come, I'll be covering, my next video is covering this Tuesday in Texas from 1991. I'll be covering Breakdown from the late 90s, one night only pay-per-views. And then soon enough, every In Your House pay-per-view in WWE history. I know there were like 20 of them, but I'm saving those for last. So after Armageddon, In Your House, Breakdown, this Tuesday in Texas, I will be breaking down, no pun intended, every In Your House pay-per-view from the early 90s to the late 90s. And then that's pretty much it. I think that wraps up WrestleRant. I've been doing this for almost 3 years now, 2.5 years by this point, 3 years by the time we wrap up in early 2017. And I really haven't decided. I filled out the whole schedule in terms of what I will be covering and reviewing up until like literally the spring of 2017. But I believe beyond that, I will be covering takeover specials too, which I'm looking forward to talking about. Every takeover special up to that year point. So probably every takeover special by April of 2017 to Takeover Dallas from April of 2016. And then beyond that, probably WCW and ECW pay-per-views. And I also forgot, obviously in September I'll be covering Night of Champions 2015, in October Hell in a Cell 2015, and so on and so forth. But beyond that, we will be covering the rest of the pay-per-views I've yet to review right here on WrestleRant as seen on the WWE Network. So until my next video, guys, you can follow me on the Twitter machine and follow me there at WrestleRant, on Facebook at facebook.com/Graham.GS.Matthews. Give the Pod channel a thumbs up, and right here on YouTube by liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing. All support is amazingly appreciated. So until next time, folks, I'm Graham G.S. Matthews. Have a great week or weekend, whatever it might be, and I'll catch you folks down the road.